2. Good afternoon and welcome to today's Industry Week webcast, Building Supply Chain Excellence in a Climate of Disruption, sponsored by Performance Solutions by Millikin. My name is Jill Jesko and I'm Executive Editor of Industry Week. Before we begin, I'd like to explain how you can participate in today's presentation. First, if at any time you are having audio difficulties or your slides aren't advancing, simply hit your F5 key to refresh your webcast console. If you are running pop-up blocking software, you will need to disable that to view the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties during today's session, please press the !help button in the upper right corner to receive assistance in solving common issues. This webinar technology allows you to resize the presentation by clicking the maximize icon in the upper right corner to enlarge the window. And we welcome your questions during today's event. To submit your questions, simply type your question into the Ask a Question window on the left side of your screen and hit the Submit button. We will be answering as many questions as possible during the Q&A session that follows the main presentation. But please feel free, and in fact, we encourage you to send in your questions at any time as they occur to you, and we will add them to the queue. Please also be aware that today's session is being recorded and it will be available on the Industry Week website within the next day for you to review. You will be notified by email when that archive is available. When the webinar ends, please take a moment to complete the feedback form that will appear on your screen. We would much appreciate that. And now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Joining us today are Phil Mcintyre, Managing Director of Performance Solutions by Millikin, as well as Sebastian Giraldo, Business Development Leader, also with Performance Solutions by Millikin. Both of these gentlemen will share more about themselves with you momentarily. And with that, let's get started. Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, attendees, for your participation in today's webinar. The title of which is Building Supply Chains Excellence in a Climate of Disruption. As Jill mentioned, a little greater detail about Sebastian and myself. I'm Managing Director of Performance Solutions. My career spans 36 years with Millikin in a very diverse roles, many diverse roles over my tenure, as you can see there. Sebastian, 15 years in the manufacturing industry, again, a subject matter expert in many systems with a very diverse role, a very diverse background in his history. Everyone knows the supply chain challenges we've been facing since the beginning of the pandemic. A significant amount of disruption has occurred in everyone's supply chains over the last 2.5 years that many organizations do not see an opportunity to improve their supply chains. We at Millikin and Performance Solutions by Millikin have worked with many organizations around the world to help optimize their supply chains and avoid some of the disruptions, smooth out some of the disruptions that the industry is facing today. But before we jump into the tactics of what that looks like, we think it relevant to give a little bit of background on who is Millikin and Company. A lot of people have not heard of Millikin. Millikin is a 157-year-old South Carolina headquartered, privately held manufacturing organization with about 8,000 people around the world. We're recognized for innovation leadership. We're recognized for manufacturing excellence. We're recognized as a value-based organization, stewards of the environment, stewards of associate engagement, strong safety processes within our footprint, a real value-based organization that is attributed to being 157 years old. The interesting part of being a 157-year-old company is for 140 of those 157 years, we had 3 CEOs. So you can imagine with 3 CEOs averaging 45 years to 50 years apiece as leaders of the company, a strong culture of continuous improvement has been developed over the years. We've expanded that culture of continuous improvement, not just in operational excellence and safety, but in supply chain, and we're going to share you some of those lessons learned today. We have 40, 50 plus locations around the world in 14 countries there to serve local markets, 8,000 associates around the world, as I mentioned, with 11,000 products in different areas. We have 5 primary divisions. The first division is a textile division. Millikin is the type of company that you don't see branded products in the market very often. There are a few. We're the type of company that manufactures products that go into companies in which you do see their brand. We make a lot of components, a lot of substrates, a lot of elements that go into some world-renowned companies. Our textile division, performance apparel, industrial, automotive products, makes up about half of Millikin and Company. Our chemical division, we make a lot of chemicals that make plastics clearer. We make a lot of chemicals that give plastics a certain tint, a lot of plastic additives, a very growing sector of Millikin and Company. Our floor covering division, which does have some of the few branded products that we make for the market, primarily in large industrial installations such as airports and hotels and theaters. You see carpet, vinyl tiles, mats. Over the last few years, we have created a healthcare division where we are marrying some of the synergies between chemicals and textiles and creating some very differentiated products in wound dressings. And our consulting division we created about 15 years ago to help other companies on their operational excellence, safety, or supply chain journeys. They say you touch a Millikin product 50 times a day, whether it's from the carpet you're walking on or whether it's a component of a chair you may be sitting in or chemicals that range from all the products you use on a daily basis. Most people touch a Millikin product somewhere 50 times a day. Being 157 years old and being historically textile-centric, our industry has changed around us. NAFTA regulations, governmental regulations, other companies moving some of their footprint overseas. You can see in the charts here that how much consumption, U.S. consumption, imported versus U.S. textile mill production. Our industry was crumbling around us beginning in the mid-'80s, and we had to change. We were an award-winning company, one of the first winners of the Malcolm Baldrige Award, if anyone remembers that award, JIPM Awards for Excellence, European Quality Awards, an award-winning company. But our industry was changing, so we had to adapt if we wanted to continue to survive, even though we had strong leadership, as I mentioned, that continued to reinvest in the company. We had to do some things differently. And we did do those things. I'm going to give you a little story about it. But one of the reasons we say we've been able to not only survive but thrive is we've been positioned in the right markets. We have a strong emphasis on innovation excellence, and we continue to maintain a strong emphasis on operational excellence. And one of the levers that made us first change is in the mid-'90s, we took some benchmarking trips to Japan. We had heard that there were pockets of the world that were running better levels of quality, better levels of efficiency on equipment that was older than ours. And that really made the organization take notice in how could these companies be outperforming our company that we continued to reinvest in. So we made some benchmarking trips to Japan and found that they were doing something uniquely different than what we had seen any time in our history. They were engaging the JIPM, Japanese Institute of Plant Maintenance, to help them on their operational excellence journey. They were performing the numbers that I mentioned to you consistently, sustainably over time. That made Millikin want to create its own journey of operational excellence. But before I talk about that journey in great detail, and before I turn it over to Sebastian in a couple of slides here, I think it's important to note that we had historically been an initiative-driven organization. We found these things that were going to improve the company. We like to put labels on them, and in the early 80s, we were going through what we called a people excellence era. We were soliciting the associates for ideas. We were getting away from using the word employee and using the word associate. We were doing all these different things that we saw other organizations doing that emphasized excellence in our people. Then we move into an era in the mid-80s that we call process excellence. We did not put these labels on these eras while we were going through it. We were just doing things that we saw other organizations doing. In the process excellence area, we were focusing on statistical process control, putting run charts on all our piece of equipment, and all those things that some of you probably remember doing in your days. We focused on process excellence. Then we move into an era of business excellence. Let's look at the cost of complexity. Let's look at margin by product family, all these different things we were doing to focus on business excellence. And when we created the Millikin Performance System, I think it's an important conversation to note that, as you see in the top left-hand corner, we chased more than 100 improvement initiatives. This Millikin Performance System was going to be initiative number 101, or whatever the right number is. And we did not move to 102 for a couple of different reasons. We did not know what we had created, the power of what we were about to create when we started the Millikin Performance System. But we uncovered such a level of problem solvers that we didn't realize we had. We knew we had strong, engaged people because we had very world-class safety numbers, and you can't achieve safety excellence without an engaged workforce. We knew we had a very engaged workforce, but we didn't realize we had such a level of problem solvers that the performance system taught us. And secondly, an element of this journey was what we call a loss analysis. Sebastian will dig into that just a little more in a few minutes. But even to this day, 30 years into our journey, we have yet to see a tool in the world that identifies an opportunity to improve or identifies an opportunity of where we should be allocating our resources proportional to a loss greater than what a loss analysis does. That's the reason the Millikin Performance System stuck in an organization that was 100 plus years old at that time. And we did not move on to initiative 102 or whatever the proper number was. It still resonates within the company today. It still resonates across the floors of all our sites, across headquarters, and across our whole footprint. Very important conversation. The Parthenon, our initial branding of our performance system, as you see here, is in this structure that I many times call the Parthenon. And so many organizations have used a visual such as this that I know everyone is Parthenon weary. But for us, I think it was important. There were so many messages that could be sent from this one picture, in that you see in the individual columns, the individual pillars, there were prescriptive steps of activities within each of one of those that attacked a certain loss in our supply chain. And it was an important conversation to our footprint that everything was going to be built on a foundation of safety, implying that nothing was more important than safety, and that message still resonates to this day. And above safety was the ability to have strategic clarity, the ability that Millikin's many manufacturing sites could be aligned with Millikin's many businesses, and they're working on the same projects, and they're aligned, and they're seeing improvements. And we're no longer facing the challenges that many organizations do that talk about articulated savings aren't seen at the income statement level of the businesses. We put processes in place to make that clear, and strategic clarity was very important for us. And on top of everything was really the basis of the presentation today, the lean enterprise, where we could look at an end-to-end supply chain and optimize it and be able to withstand and adapt to disruptions far better than we could have prior to a performance system. All those falling under the umbrella of the Millikin performance system. Very important visual, very important conversations early. But I also think there's value in seeing how the performance system has changed over time. It wasn't static. There are parts of a performance system that need to remain in place and do not need to change, because you don't need to give the organization the impression that this is another initiative and you're going to move on to number 102. But our visual, our branding mechanism has changed to what you see on the right there. It has been improved for agility. We have found ways to create the pull strategy through here. And we also focus on strategic clarity from a deployment based on impact. Financially, where do we see the biggest benefit? You'll also see many similarities from your picture on your right to the picture on the left. From the standpoint of pillars, have now been identified in the same manner, the same prescriptive processes, the same number of steps, the same focus on reducing a loss within your supply chain. But you also see the middle part of this new visual of how it really strives towards being a more enterprise-centric approach. I like the new visual. I think it does a good job of branding our processes within Millikin and Company, and also helps other organizations have the conversations about what does this look like in your footprint. And finally, a quote that we took from Mr. Millikin, this individual you see here was the third generation. His grandfather started the company in 1865, turned it over to who was Mr. Millikin's father. Mr. Millikin here, Roger Millikin, ran the company for about 60 years. And we use this quote often in conversations with clients, and we keep it very visual and visible within this footprint here in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Operational excellence secures the present. Innovation excellence secures the future. So a good way of capturing in two sentences where we need to keep our focus on excellence today operationally and excellence in the future driven by innovation. So those 13 slides that I've went through right there were really intended to tee up Millikin and Company, that uses as a placeholder what gives us the right to talk about operational excellence to a group such as this. It's important to recognize that many of the elements we talk about today are homegrown. Many of them have been implemented from things we've learned in the market. Many of them have been based on things we've done right, things we've done wrong. 157 years of excellence has gone into many of the elements that you're going to see in Sebastian's presentation. But we both feel that it's very important before we get into the tactics that to show that there's a lot of sweat equity that's gone into creating these processes that we're going to highlight in greater detail. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Sebastian Geralder, to pick up the presentation from here. Sebastian?
Sure, Phil. Thank you so much for that great introduction to Millikin and our performance system. Now that you mentioned some of the challenges we faced in the past, and remember that complex times with a lot of imported goods from Japan, I remember that change is constant. The urgency is what matters. So we've been through different challenges throughout all the years in Millikin, and this is not different time. So I think for all the companies and attendees today, there's clear that we're living challenging times. We're seeing major forces, a lot of concerns within industries. So we like to cover some of these major forces and concerns. So and why? Because they all really applied to the climate of disruption inside the supply chain. The first one is demographic decline and people moving to reside into larger cities. That's causing labor shortages. This morning I was heading to a keynote, and seems like that labor shortages in the U.S. is not going to be, it's going to be permanent. It's not going to be a temporary situation. Will be longer than that. So we need to adapt and understand that it's gonna stay. So, and that is impacting the costs in salaries and everything that comes with that into the supply chain. We have a climate transition that's interfering with transportation of goods due to extreme weather or natural disasters. So climate change is also increasing energy costs. That's another major force we're seeing right now. We need to understand what's going on, what are the factors external that are in our environment. Deglobalization, trade wars, geopolitical turmoil. That's forcing companies to consider relocating operations, nearshoring to different countries. That's another major force, and obviously the technological acceleration we're experiencing. Data industry 4.0 that promises to solve many problems in the supply chain, but sometimes poorly executed and far from filling all expectations once you have them. So all this is definitely bringing many concerns to CEOs, CFOs for many different reasons. Lack of materials, try to retain your workforce, the increase of cost. So definitely challenging times. But let's see what is happening actually in the current situation. We're experiencing right now after COVID that most companies are seeing an increase in demand. They're dealing with back orders. The unemployment is high as well, and technology that is typically capable, but long before it's adopted. So we're not collecting all the benefits now from the technology we maybe recently installed. So we need to rely now on efficiency, and truly learn to do more with less. So we're and will mention that in another slide that's the opportunistic manufacturing that we need to consider right now. So more regarding the actual situation and to describe this, we used to use the term VUCA. That's a term coined back in the 80s. That means a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, let's say, environment. Now, seems like VUCA it's quite outdated after COVID. So this guy, Jamais Casio, I don't know if it's the right pronunciation of his name. Yeah, this guy is a futurologist from California. He coined this term, and I think is relevant. We seem to be moving from VUCA environment to BANI environment. I won't explain the full concept, but the next generation of business will definitely live in it and applies perfectly for the actual situation of the supply chain. So BANI stands for brittle, that's breakable, susceptible to catastrophe, anti-fragile seems to be the new resilience term. Anxious, we see a lot of now. We see a lot of this nowadays, not only from people, but from the entire job market. Not to mention the stock market that it's more anxious than ever. We're less confident about the future, definitely. And non-linear events are disconnected. There's no correlation between markets, variables, other signals in the economy. So at least less predictable that the markets used to be, and finally incomprehensible. That means that old answers don't make sense anymore. We can't understand what we don't have control over, so that makes things different to understand. So this BANI world is setting the stage for the future, and I believe supply chains need to be really aware of this new environment. So let's jump to some of the solutions. What to do? The question is, how do we build high-performance supply chains in this environment, in this disruptive environment? Let's move to some of the solutions. Some of these we have refined them in our internal operations for years and used them with our clients as well. We need four main capabilities. First, consumer centricity, systems building. Third, we need high performance working teams and rapid improvement. Let's describe some of these in more detail. Right. Let's go to the first one. Consumer centricity. That's important to relate to the concept of losses. So for you working with a continuous improvement or methods of losses elimination, so we know that every activity that gets in the way of what adds value to our customers should be even eliminated, reduced, simplified. Many losses are actually hidden in our operations, and in company don't have many methods to uncover those losses. So that leads to longer lead times, sometimes delivery errors, higher costs, and definitely, and as a consequence, frustrated customers. So that's why losses matters to our customers, because if we have a lot of them, we won't be able to deliver their expectations. Let me go one app here. So, what to do in terms of losses? We instill in our clients the zero loss mindset. Only when clients and companies are able to map the process, calculate the value, prioritize those losses in every function of the supply chain, we can get closest to what customers really pay for. Also quite important in actual conditions with high inflation. With the losses elimination, we can offset the costs that we are adding to our products or services we provide. So, couple of terms here. So, map your losses end to end. That's important. Sometimes logistics losses are even higher than manufacturing losses. Try to focus on time, not on cost centers. And this is key. Replace inventory with information that's aligned to the Industry 4.0 different solutions. But yesterday I was talking to one of our clients, and they are kind of reluctant to reduce inventories because in these disruptive times, they basically rely on high inventories to provide service. And I said, it's not a big issue with the inventory, it's not the number, it's what's the cost of managing that inventory. Every time you transport anything, every time you do a picking, every time you reprocess something, every time you need to move something, that is the cost behind the inventory. So it is not the inventory itself. Sometimes it's more regards the losses you have to move and manage that inventory. Okay, let's move to another one of these capabilities key for the supply chain. That is the system building. System building. In Millikin, we develop a model to support our supply chain. We also struggle with many of these elements. We have product complexity, more than 11,000 different products that we manufacture. We have issues with material flows. We also have bottlenecks. We have tons of data. We not always have good information, even if we have good data. We have inefficiencies in logistics. I mean, we need more strategic alignment, et cetera, et cetera. So we understand companies struggle with different things in the supply chain. Every component, here's the key, every component is a cross-functional team. That eliminates silos, that offers specific continuous improvement solutions to those supply chain opportunities. And that's why it's so important. Let me deep down to what a system is and how it operates. Every component, it's an empowered team. They connect and align with the goals of the organization. The teams know and have really clear priorities of what's important, and they implement solutions followed by clear metrics. That's how a system operates. It's not only a cycle of improvement, it is also, especially in this non-linear world, that fosters a lot of collaboration between different amongst areas. That helps information flow. That helps with the interconnection of areas, and that really drives sustainability and ownership of the process. That's why we really emphasize the importance of creating systems, not only projects, not only tools, not only one method here and there. It's a system where really creates a sustainable continuous improvement. So where do we impact with this system? So results from systems are intended to be long-term and impact exactly where you need it and when the customers see it. We can be working on productivity benefits. We might need faster time to market. We might need higher flexibility depending on your business case. These systems should impact directly where you really need it. Let's go to the third one. This is actually the one I like the most. High performance teams in this disruption and environment. We have a lot of anxiety in our teams, in our workforce. We need three main things. First is a clear purpose. The road might be fuzzy or blur, but we need to be clear where and why we want to get there. In times of this great resignation, I was hearing something this morning about that. I mean, it's a huge concern right now. But in times of great resignation, employees demand clear purpose. That's important. Second, we need information in real time, analysis in real time. But most importantly, that data, information, and analysis is autonomous teams making the decisions in real time. That's the difference. We might have a lot of data, a lot of information, but who's making decisions? We can't wait 3 levels up for somebody to make a decision anymore. We need, autonomous, agile teams that are able to make decisions, empowered by some, digital tools or whatever resources we have, and finally, agile frameworks. Agile frameworks, for those that have work on Scrum or maybe Kanban type of work, that means that allows teams to try different solutions fast in a linear environment. When we needed to run a lot of experiments, we don't know exactly what's going to work. We need to run experiments. So that's why agile frameworks work really well. We tried, we test, and quoting Jeff Bezos, fail fast, fail cheap, and move on. That's key when we work on high performance teams. And finally, and not less important, we really need to focus on rapid improvement. So when markets are need rapid cycles of improvement, when markets are changing so fast, we like the concept of opportunistic operations. That means if you don't take advantage now of any situation or of any opportunity, and you don't correct it quickly or act quickly, then you miss the train. Don't wait only for technology or maybe experts to solve the problem. Involve your people correctly, enable them with some methodologies, and you'll see the transformation. So that's why acting fast, acting with high performance teams, acting in terms of systems really makes the difference, and you'll see the transformation. So one single example here, that's a case study we were able to share. This is one of our clients, General Mills. They needed rapid improvement projects to work on specific losses. So they requested specific work on 4 different sites with the different losses, waste reduction, changeover improvements, global efficiency improvements. So they needed quick results, working on fundamentals, but they work on projects and short, medium-term projects that gave them a lot of savings, but a lot of losses reduction. A lot of this impacted their costs, their efficiencies, but also the market that they were serving as well. So in summary, so we get some time for some questions as well. So these are the 4 capabilities we need within the supply chains if you wanna transform them. Understand what our consumer or customers values and the losses behind that value. Build the systems to close the gap, break the silos, and make it sustainable. Involve your and enable your people, but obviously with a purpose. Do it fast before the opportunity is gone. So these 4 elements are key for Millikin and are key for our clients. So I think this completes my presentations in terms of this webinar, but I would like to end presenting something about our division, Performance Solution by Millikin. We offer consultant services for many different companies, many different industries for the last 12 more years. We've been serving clients in different countries, more than 400 clients so far in more than 23 different countries. We've been refining the way we serve our clients. Let me move on. Okay, thank you, Phil. So we have four main principles. We creating systems, as you saw. We transfer a lot of knowledge from our own operations to our performance solution by Millikin way of engaging with our clients. We have really experienced practitioners. You know, a lot of them have experience in manufacturing, in operations, in maintenance, in continuous improvement. We definitely believe that zero loss mindset, the zero loss thinking, is the key element to start every process. And we do it with your people. We do it with your team. We do it hands-on. You know, the process. So that makes a huge difference. All right, I think we can get started with the Q&A session. So if I can hand it over to you, so we move on to questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for that great presentation. A few of our audience members have already submitted questions, so we are going to jump right into those. If you have not submitted a question and you have a question, I urge you to submit it now. And also, I would like to remind everybody to please take a moment to complete the feedback form that will appear on your screen at the end of the webinar. Okay, with that, our first question is, in your experience, what is the most critical element of, quote, getting this right?
Absolutely. If you let me answer that question, I believe every element is key, but to get this right, you need to understand the concept of losses. All methods at the end are focused and designed to eliminate losses. So if we understand the concept of losses, if we understand the value of eliminating losses, we might focus on the right things. We might add a dollar value to those losses. We might understand where to put the efforts, where to put the projects, where to put the teams and the pillars if that is needed. So even though all the elements are key, so understanding the concept of losses, that's the most critical element before you start doing projects or implementing any tools.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. Our next question. Are these methodologies transferable to most industry segments?
I'll take that question, Sebastian. I think it's a great question as well. We have found in our experience that these methodologies are not only transferable to almost every single industry segment, it's transferable to organizations that may feel they're non-industry. I like to say there's two types of manufacturing. One where there's large pieces of equipment where raw material goes in one end and a product comes out the other, and the people are there to tend or to manage the equipment from a standpoint of wastes and downtimes, et cetera. There's the other type of manufacturing where the people are there to assemble the product as it goes through their supply chain. And their loss profile is different. The losses there would be a function of training, of time, delays, of not having product when you need it. These methodologies are transferable to any type of manufacturing footprint. They're also transferable to transactional environments, such as banking, such as insurance. So these methodologies that we're talking about, if they are founded on what Sebastian just talked about, if they are founded on the proper loss landscape, and if they are founded on engaging your workforce, regardless of what that looks like, these methodologies are transferable.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Our next question. and this is a biggie actually. How do I help my organization start this journey?
Yeah, it is a big question. There are many different ways to start, but we believe that before we start changing and transforming an organization, the company needs to be aware that they need to change. That there are many factors outside their companies that need the change to be done and faced. So that's the free key element. Wanting to change, wanting to adapt, wanting to do things differently, wanting to or willing to embrace this process. That's the first step. And after that, I think doors are open to do more. So when we typically engage with a client, we start understanding the business case, understanding the opportunities, the external factors for their company. So we saw here a lot of major elements from the environment. We map which of those elements are impacting more their companies. So we start designing or master planning the next step. So we don't have a cookie cutter approach. We understand what's needed specifically, what's tailored for that specific company, what pillars and processes need to be improved, and then we start working with their teams, with their own structure to engage with the company. We train, we coach the teams, we measure every project we follow up. So that's the way we typically start to don't make the answer longer. That's how we start.
Okay, thank you. And on a sort of a related note, the question we have is, what were some of the key challenges you faced during the transformation process?
Sebastian, I'll take this one as well. I think, again, a great question from the audience. I think some of the challenges that Millikin faced initially that other organizations we work with is you have to have leadership commitment from the very beginning because this is an investment. It is an uncovering of areas where to work that may not be currently seen through that loss analysis. It'll be everyone's initial reaction that there's no way we're this strong of an organization if our loss landscape shows that we have this much opportunity to improve. But the organizations that challenge themselves the best to really uncover and prioritize losses from a standpoint of allocating resources to improve those losses are the ones that do this the best. And some of the challenges there are leadership commitment and leadership buy-in. We also see leadership changes cause challenges in the process, meaning that one leader may be bought in and the next leader coming behind them may not be as bought in. That's very important. That's one of the reasons we focus on the hourly workforce to sustain these gains. Once it's seen at the plant floor level, once it's seen at the hourly level, then they're going to hold on and embrace the changes all through different type of leadership. So one of the first key challenges that organization sees is leadership commitment. Another one that we've seen is when an organization, and this has happened a lot over the last several years, has multiple big projects going on. And what I mean by that is an ERP installation. Many companies, that's so important to get the ERP implementation right that the other initiatives, the other programs that are occurring in the organization may take a back seat for a while. Then they need to come back to the forefront. When there's huge machinery installations or huge acquisitions that are occurring, it requires resources that many times historically has been a function of continuous improvement. So leadership changes or other key value drivers in the organization are what we see as challenges during the transformation.
Okay, thank you, Phil. I'd like to turn this back over to Sebastian for a final comment or two before we wrap up today's presentation. Take it away, Sebastian.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my final thought here is ask to leave this as a question. What's your company doing? What actions are you taking to get ready for the next disruption? This is no time to wait and see what's coming on. We gotta be prepared. We need to take action. That's my final mention, and I want you to reflect on that.
Okay, thank you. This was an excellent presentation. I'd like to again thank our speakers today, Phil Mcintyre and Sebastian Giraldo, and our sponsor, Performance Solutions by Millikin. Most of all, I would like to thank you, our audience, for your kind attention and your questions. And finally, on behalf of Industry Week, I'd like to say thank you and have a great, productive remainder of your day.